And welcome to another edition of Odyssey Journals. I'm Trip Mitchell, joined by veteran newsman Randall Carlisle. And we have a very lovely guest who is dressed beautifully for the occasion.
She dressed properly. We didn't. Okay.
Well,
Her name is Justine Winkler. So thank you for coming, Justine.
You're welcome.
Justine,
Glad to be here.
who would you say is dressed better? Randall in that, painting shirt, or me in a classy sweater over a t-shirt? Who?
I'm going to go with myself.
Yes.
Okay, good job. That is the correct
Yes.
answer.
Yeah.
But you have an interesting story. Do you mind telling us?
Yeah, so I'm in Odyssey House right now. This is my second time there. I've been there for, 4 months this time. The first time I was there for 8 months, and I got out, went to outpatient, and I ended up relapsing, and so I called Odyssey House. They let me go back, and yeah.
That's an important part right there. They let you go back. They don't look at a defeat.
Oh, Justine, you screwed up. You can't get back in. It's not like that.
I was in Odyssey outpatient when I relapsed, and I actually had relapsed a couple times before they told me that you need to go back to residential, and residential just let me come back right away. They didn't,
No judgment?
No judgment. And when I got there, they were so loving and just willing to help me,
What was your drug of choice?
My drug of choice is heroin. Mostly heroin. Heroin and meth, but mostly heroin. That's my go-to.
What is it about heroin that becomes so addictive?
For me, it's the relief from my anxiety and everything, all emotions, period. I don't like to feel emotions, so heroin takes everything away.
You check out.
You check out. You completely check out, and you're in your own little warm world where nothing matters anymore. So, yeah, that.
If we don't get too personal, what were you trying to check out from? What was going on?
I have a lot of, my anxiety, and I have a lot of trauma my anxiety comes from my trauma, I have a lot of trauma that stems from my drug addiction, or as a result of my drug addiction, being out on the streets by myself, put myself in some bad places, and I ended up experiencing some trauma. So just checking out from that anxiety that comes with it.
Justine, how old were you when you first encountered drugs?
I was 12 when I first smoked
Whoa.
marijuana. When I first encountered opiates, I was probably 14.
Jeez.
And I started with Oxycontin, and then 17 when I moved to heroin.
How did you get to Oxycontin?
Just friends. So I started doing pain pills. Well, I started with Lortabs and, Percocet, and then I had older friends that were doing Oxycontin. So I ended up moving from Lortabs and Percocets to Oxycontin. And then when they did away with the Oxycontin,
It made it hard to get.
They made it hard to get,
Yeah.
yeah. They made it hard to get, and it was very expensive. So I had a friend come to me and say, heroin's cheaper. They overcharged me, but they said it's $20 for this little balloon. And so I bought the balloon and I smoked it. And
How did you afford to pay for the drugs?
I got money from my parents. I stole money from my parents mostly. And then when I got older, I started committing crimes like forgery and stuff like that, stealing, retail theft. But when I was younger, I was stealing money from my parents.
Do you still talk to your parents now?
Yeah, so my stepdad has passed away, but my mom, she's one of my biggest supports, Even after everything I've done to her, I've stolen a lot of money from her. When my stepdad passed away, she got some life insurance money, and I stole quite a bit of it from her. I never thought she would talk to me again when she found out, but she's my biggest support today.
And that makes a tremendous difference.
Yeah, definitely.
We bring that up a lot. How important do you think family support is when you're in a program like Odyssey?
I think it's very important. I know that if I didn't have my family there for me, to come visit me and to be there just to talk to you on the phone, or, just to support me, I don't think I would stay. Because it gets hard sometimes. The program's hard. It's very hard, and you need that outlet, You need that visit from your family to unwind and just know that somebody cares and somebody loves you, you know?
What does that tell you about love and moms and life? The fact that you, her husband dies, she gets insurance money, you steal some of the insurance money, yet she still loves you and supports you.
Yeah.
What does that say?
It says a lot about the person that she is. I know that I have an amazing mother. She has unconditional love for me. It's taught me what unconditional love is, you know? People can do things to you and you can forgive them and still love them. And I don't know, I look up to her a lot. She taught me how to just go about life, you know? Like, just forgiveness for other people, addicts especially. I have my sister's an addict and she's done some things to me that I never thought I would be able to forgive her for, but I've forgiven her. And
How is she doing now?
she's good. She's got almost 3 years clean. She has a baby now, and so she's someone I look up to.
See, that's one of the reasons we do this podcast is there's hope out there. And well, Odyssey's slogan is "We are recovery," and there's this huge recovery community. There's a lot of people like you and me and Lee behind the camera and Justine who are in recovery. You know, and it's possible. I mean, you know, I hate to knock the news since I was part of it, but we always, like when we were doing stories on the block, we'd show people passed out on the sidewalk and things, and that's the way people picture addiction. And that is addiction, but there's also this side, you know.
Well, and one of the, Justine, in the AA program, I've heard, you know, part of what we do is very similar to what you do, only at Odyssey House it's much more intense and 7 days a week. But there's an expression, you can get off anywhere. You don't have to get off at the bottom of addiction.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of people, and not to speak for Randall, who are talented professionals. No one knows that there's an issue there.
Yeah, I was a functional alcoholic for 40 years. And when I've been clean I went through detox and 2 outpatient programs, and something finally clicked. I've been clean for like 7 years, but I couldn't. Initially, I was embarrassed to tell people that I'm a recovering alcoholic. Now I will talk about it, and the first question is, when I was watching you on TV, were you drunk all the time? And I wasn't. That's the definition of a functional alcoholic. I had a perfect shift. I'd go to work at 2 p.m, get off at 10:35, go to the bar and drink.
Who was counting that 10:35? Were you out
I was
the door?
counting that. I'd say as soon as I said goodnight, thanks for watching, we were out the door, and I was at the bar 15 minutes later. And I'd drink till I would pass out every night. And I did that for like 40 years. But then I could sleep in until noon, 1 o'clock, and go to work sober. And so I was never on the air drunk. But that's the first thing people think about when you say I'm a recovering alcoholic.
Though we both know people who have been broadcasters
Sure.
while drinking, and you never know.
Yeah, that's true. With
So-
me, you would have known, because for some reason, I blacked out almost every time I drank, and I began to slur my words very quickly after a few drinks. So it would have been, "Good evening, I'm Randall Carlisle." And I think somebody might have thought something was wrong, you know.
And that's a situation where getting back to what level you get off on. Now, your sister, as you mentioned, has been sober for 3 years. Did she hit the bottom, or was she able to get off this merry-go-round maybe a little higher up?
I think she hit the bottom. I mean, I believe that everyone has their own bottom, like you say, so everyone gets off at their own spot. I think she hit the bottom, though. She was pregnant and using, and, you know, my niece was born addicted, and DCFS got involved, and so they ended up putting her and my brother-in-law in treatment. And then my mom took the baby for a little bit, and then they reunited, like the parents program, but she went to House of Hope. They reunited her with her child, and she's been sober ever since. But yeah, I believe she hit the bottom.
So for many people, that higher power is their child.
Yeah. I think she's even said to me, "I wish that you had a child because it would be easier for you to stay sober, you know?" Because for her, ever since she's had her child, ever since she's gotten sober, since that child, she's stayed sober. and it's kept her sober.
What got you into Odyssey the first time around?
So I went to jail. I'm in drug court, and I went to jail because I had just relapsed, and they sentenced me to Odyssey House.
Now, come on, you shouldn't say it that way. They sentenced me
Well,
to Odyssey House.
That's what
but that's true.
Yeah, so they gave me a sentence to go to Odyssey House, and at first, I'm going to be honest, I was mad because Odyssey House is hard, and I had heard about it. In jail, too, you hear bad things about Odyssey House, you know. You hear that it's a snitch program and all kinds of bad things that now I look at it, I don't see them as true now that I've experienced Odyssey House. So when I got...
Explain snitch program.
It's... You have to hold people accountable.
And that's one of the most important aspects.
And that's one of the things they fight the most. She can explain it, but we call it an encounter process.
Yeah.
And it's because we're based on a therapeutic community, and we want everybody within that community to stay healthy and be on the right track. So explain how it would work if say you and I are in Mill Creek and you see me even something somewhat small talking to a woman without anybody else being there. What would you do?
So you have to write an encounter. It would say, you know, Randall, I feel concerned when you talk to Sally without a breaker. And then you have to...
And a breaker is?
A breaker is a third party awareness.
Okay.
You can't be alone.
You can't speak to the opposite sex without a third party awareness.
That sounds like my high school.
So
go ahead. So you would say...
So you would write the encounter, and then you would run it, and I would say, Randall, you know, I feel concerned when you talk to Sally without a breaker. Then you would
And she's
respond.
doing this in front of the whole group.
Yeah.
So you're upset at this point.
I could be, but she has every right to do that because I'm threatening the safety and the health and everything of everybody in my community, in this therapeutic community. So, and this is a learning process because it takes her guts to say that, because especially like if you've been in jail or prison or something like that, where you never say anything about somebody doing something wrong, and she's bringing up something that could be as minor as me just talking, you know, that I wasn't trying to put the moves on this girl, I was just talking to her, you know. So you would say it how, and then I'll respond.
So I'd say, Randall, I feel concerned when you talk to Sally without a breaker.
And I would say that I have to respond, and we're both in front of this group, which also makes it pretty difficult. I'd say, Justine, I'm sorry I made you feel concerned, and I should have had a breaker, and I acknowledge that, and I don't know, something slipped my mind, and I was just talking for a moment to her, something like that. And then, or I could say, what would happen if I said, Justine, you're making that up. I wasn't talking to a girl. What would happen then?
So the therapists are there, and they would tell you, you know, just acknowledge her feelings. And then after you acknowledge the feelings, you have the chance to open it up. They call opening it up, and then you can explain, you know, I wasn't talking to her without a breaker, or I was talking to her without a breaker, whatever the circumstances were.
But the key is acknowledging her feelings. And it's like it's a process of teaching. We all deal with frustrations in life, and we get mad at people. We think we've been dealt with unfairly, that kind of stuff. And it's teaching people in a very reasonable way to deal with. We don't have to like everybody if we're in Odyssey's residential treatment program, and not everybody likes everybody else. But that's true of being outside in society.
Yeah, it's part of life. So this honesty, and you mentioned that you'd heard bad things about Odyssey because of that honesty aspect.
Snitching program.
They call it the snitch program in jail. So I had heard about it, and I absolutely did not want to go there. So when I got there, I had a bad attitude about being there, you know. And for the first month, it was really hard for me to stay. I ended up going LACA, which is leaving against clinical advice. I left for 3 days. I relapsed within that 3 days, and then I called Odyssey and said, you know, I would like to come back, and they let me back. That was the first time I was there. They let me come back, and after I had come back, my attitude changed about the program, because I went out there and experienced addiction again. You know, I went out there and experienced how bad things really get, how quickly it gets that bad. When
you left and you go back on the street, how hard was it to find drugs?
Oh, it was easy. Is it within 10, 15 minutes? I was on the tracks and I got my drugs.
How'd you pay for them?
I didn't have to, because I know people from being out there before. I just asked them, "Can you help me out?" And they helped me out.
For those of us who haven't experienced that, it's kind of a whole culture that.
Yeah.
See, our addiction was lucky because we were consuming a legal beverage. You know, it's legal to drink alcoholic beverages, so it made it easier to find what you needed to find, I think. You know, although I still had to go to the liquor store to a
Yeah.
Maverick or something.
So
if you
you-
only took tracks, and in
Yeah.
10 or 15 minutes you
So
had
you
heroin.
you could find someone on a Sunday. Whereas-
Yeah.
That's
I
true.
could find
Yeah.
someone on a Sunday.
Okay. But getting back to your family's reaction, so your mother had to feel like she just has had amazing luck with your sister having a baby,
Yeah.
being 3 years sober, you in the program. What are some of the things that she said to you that make it seem all worthwhile?
I don't know necessarily things she said to me, but just seeing that she comes to visit me every day, and she tells me, or not every Sunday. Sorry.
Okay.
Excuse me. So she comes to visit me every Sunday, and she tells me things like she's proud of me, or that she loves me. Just hearing those small things makes it worth it, you know? Seeing that she's forgiven me for everything that I've done to her makes it worth it.
That's fantastic.
She, we had talked earlier, Justine and I, out at her residential place about drugs in behind bars. And one of the things you told me that sort of blew me away was you said you knew people while you were at the Salt Lake County Jail who stayed high the whole time they were there.
Yeah.
Explain that. I mean, the average person says, well, no, wait a minute, you're behind bars, you've got guards. How in the world do you stay high the whole time you're there?
Well, so people sneak in drugs. They swallow them in balloons or garbage bags. They swallow them, and then they have them when they're in there. They either throw them up or they, poop them out. And then they sell them to inmates, or people take each other's pills. They sell their pills, and they do pills there.
That's amazing. And on last week's show, we found out that it's maybe the number is as high as 75% of people who are in jail are addicts or alcoholics prior getting in, and that's a shocking number.
Yeah, I believe that it's that high.
And that shows how addiction is changing our criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Did you know, I mean, the majority of people in there they had issues with drugs or alcohol?
Yeah, I would say 75% is pretty accurate. Everyone that I know in there has problems with drugs or alcohol. It's maybe one or two people that you meet that's in there for just crimes, and it doesn't have to do with an addiction,
Straight crimes.
Yeah, straight crimes.
Yeah. Is there such a thing?
Yeah.
And your experience inside jail, is that made Odyssey House seem easier, or is it tougher? What's the transition like?
So I think it's made it easier because in jail, no matter how bad I wanted to stay sober, it was hard, because there's drugs everywhere, there's pills everywhere, it's hard to stay sober when you're in jail.
That's a classic line right there. It's hard to stay sober while you're in jail.
Yeah.
Think about that. I didn't mean to interrupt your train
No,
of
it's
thought.
okay.
Go ahead.
So then in Odyssey House, it's different because you have a whole family of people that has the same goal. They're trying to stay sober. They want to change their lives. They want to change their behaviors, and it makes your lifestyle easier. The decision to change makes it easier,
But yet it's an environment that's tough, so it's not like you're being coddled while you're in Odyssey
No,
House.
you're not. Not at all.
Poor Justine. I know you want to do heroin today, but that's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not like that.
No, it's a tough environment. You have to be accountable for yourself. You have to work.
Do you get any time off?
It depends on what level you're at in the program. The higher you go in the levels, the less time you have, the less free time you have, because you have to start giving back to the house and helping around the house more. when you get to a certain level, you have to go to work from 9 to 5 every day. Well, Monday
Is it
through
tough
Friday.
finding jobs?
So we don't work. They call them departments. We don't go out and work. There's pivot sides that go out and work at jobs for Odyssey House, but we work basically within the house.
So it's cooking, cleaning, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
cooking, cleaning,
Yard work.
yard work.
What's your specialty?
I work for transitional housing, so I go out. I get to go out every day and work on the properties of transitional housing.
And she also mentioned we have agreements with a number of companies, manufacturing companies, Williamson, Godwin. They make truck bodies, the big things you see on the back of trucks that were driving in the last snowstorm. They carry gravel and spit stuff out. And we have some of our people working there. We have agreements with, I guess the best known in town would be Hires. And we have people working at Hires through training. It's a program that they've worked for years hiring our people when they go out on these jobs.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has to be, when you've been on the street and living kind of not in the full spotlight, going and getting a regular job has to be a wonderful first step.
And what she described is, and that's part of when I say a therapeutic community, I mean, the people in the higher levels are basically running the daily activities in each house and also taking care of everything. I mean, yeah, we do have a person in charge of the kitchen, and we do have professionals in the houses, therapists and psychologists and social workers, but you're sort of running yourself, the higher levels,
So the higher you get in the levels, like I said, you work for the house and you become, they call them kitchen coordinator or kitchen supervisor, and you're above that department. So
You have some accountability at that point.
you have accountability at that
How
point.
is the food?
Right now our foods are pretty good.
Yeah.
We have some people that work in the kitchen right now that they're like chefs or something.
It's always nice to
See, the theory behind this, and it makes sense if you think about it, and that's why it's called a therapeutic community, is if I'm just coming into the program and I'm a heroin addict and I just detoxed and I'm coming in, and she's like towards the top of the program and she's a heroin addict, it's a lot easier in recovery and had been there for a while. It's a lot easier for me to believe what she's telling me than it is for you if you had no experience with it. And so even though there's supervision with professionals, I buy into what she's saying a lot more than what I buy into what you're saying.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Watching people that have been, I know that have been in my exact shoes or close to my exact same shoes, watching them grow and change and live the lifestyle makes it easier for me to want to follow their footsteps,
Yeah, and we've had some guests on previous shows who have had a rough go, and you see them get into Odyssey House, go get a further degree at the U of U, and are therapists and are helping people, but they've also been through the hell
Yeah,
that people have been through.
yeah.
So we want people, if you've got someone in your family who's having some challenges, if you know someone at work or just a friend, there's a number to call, and it's right here on the bottom of the screen. And Randall even knows it by heart.
801-322-3222.
How long did it take you to learn that one?
Well, it took a while. I'm pretty old now.
Okay.
My brain doesn't work that well.
But it's a phone call to Odyssey House, and there are a ton of recovery options in the community. Utah, we're blessed with some amazing people that can help out, everything from 12-step programs all the way to inpatient.
There's something for everyone, and I really believe that there's hope for recovery through something. I mean, whether it's, I went to an outpatient program at Uni, okay? She's going to Odyssey House. I know many people who have stayed clean and sober for a long time through Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just, there's something for everybody, but you have to want help, I think, and if the program's not right for you, find another program.
But the important thing is to ask for help, or if you're watching and you're trying to help a family member out, call this number. Talking to someone is the first step. and learn what the options are. Because
Go to our website, odysseyhouse.org, or go to any of the other treatment center websites and see what kind of programs they offer, see what they charge, see how the programs work, and you know you need to do some work on finding the right place. I think it in a way it's sort of easier to. I don't know if you'd call it easier, but when you're going through like drug court and you're ordered into a place like Odyssey House, it doesn't give you a lot of options.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting out there watching and you think you know somebody who has a problem, it's worth checking out. What would work for that person. I don't know. Because what would you do if let's say you have a daughter someday who, we hope not, would ever have an addiction issue? What would you do?
I would probably research a bunch of different treatment centers and see which one fits or best suits her, because there's different things that play into addiction. There's mental health, and some places focus more on mental health than the addiction part, or there's like Odyssey House behavior modification, and there's all different kinds of treatment centers. And for me, I've been to a lot of different ones, and I'm just grateful that drug court sentenced me to Odyssey House because I have some behaviors that I needed modified. So.
Are they modified now?
They're not completely modified, but they're getting there.
But she is wonderfully dressed. Justine, thank you so much for coming out.
You're welcome.
We do appreciate it, and your story is very poignant, and the fact that your mother visits every Sunday.
Yeah.
And she's got 2 great daughters. That's pretty great right there.
And you're giving back, because by sharing your story, I try to say this as often as possible. We're not trying to exploit you and hear all the dirt on Justine, but by hearing your story, I think it helps other people to see that you can recovery, and it's important to share stories like that. And I think it's also healthy for us as addicts and alcoholics to share our stories as well.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of us out there, and though by the grace of God, and this is the type of situation where Randall and I do this just as a way to give back and to meet people like yourself who are going through second time through, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
So for Randall Carlisle, I'm Trip Mitchell saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.